Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to Hawman's Advice Forum. I am the Hawman, and today is the 21st of June. I'm going to answer all your questions that you guys asked me on the AMA that I posted on the 14th of June. 3 people posted questions, so let's start with the first one by Wayne Young. What do you know? That's a very general question, so I'll give you a general answer. Lots of stuff. What's your occupation? Now, when it comes to like income and finances and jobs, I'm a little bit private. Even when I was like making a little bit of money, I kind of did not like to divulge that information. More because I'm a private person and I don't want, I kind of value my anonymity. But I'll tell you this, that before COVID-19 happened, I was able to just sit at home and not go anywhere and relax and still make money. And I'm still in that position of privilege right now. So yeah, it's kind of vague, but I'm going to keep it vague. Next question. Did any of your friends become successful? Here's the thing. The term successful has no actual definition. In my opinion, I think that if you can lead a healthy life and you're not depressed and you have the energy to go the next day, I think you are successful. Now, if in terms of income, I think they actually have more income than I do. I think I know 2 people who make like $100,000 or more working for the government. And so they certainly make more money than me in that regards. But what's the issue? They have a $200,000 student loan, right? So they have a $200,000 student loan, and they had to get that in order to get the $100,000 income because they went to law school. Now, for me, in my case, I'm totally debt free, right? So even though I make less money than that, I think when you're debt free, sky's the limit. And who knows, maybe I might take out a loan, but I would only take out a loan knowing that I can cover, like if for example, let's say shit hits the fan, I can still cover that loan. Whereas, if you have a $200,000 loan and you lose that $100,000 a year job, you're fucked. You know what I'm saying? You're fucked. So again, the definition of success is arbitrary. Sometimes I consider myself to be a failure just because I don't have any friends to learn and grow together with. Whereas when I was 16 or 17, I know I had that. So I don't really know how to answer your question. I just think if you know how to take care of yourself and you can wake up for the next day, sure, you're successful. And then you asked, is your girlfriend successful? She's on studying for her 3rd college degree. But the thing is she's from a place where college is free, so it's not like you're taking out the balance of a mortgage to pay for it like students in the U.S. do, which makes them really freaking retarded. So yeah, I guess she is. She's a good person. I'm maybe probably would have been better just to get a career right after the 1st degree, but she didn't like what she was studying, so yeah, I don't really have much to say about that. But yeah, again, the definition of success is there's no real definition, in my opinion, because when I was 16 and I had no money, I felt successful more than I do now. Next question: did you see the movie Whiplash? What do you think of it? No, I didn't see it, so I'm not going to give an opinion of a movie I didn't see. Next question. Do you believe most people are lazy? If so, how can one avoid laziness? Totally. I think most people are lazy because they have so many avenues to improve their lives, but all they do is make excuses. How much information is out there to, for example, improve your diet? Tons of it. But here's the other thing too. The bad side of the internet is there's just way too much information overload. So you just engage in analysis paralysis where you're just reading one article, another article over and over again. But that's a discussion for another topic. But in general, if you give people advice, they won't take it. Well, a lot of times you'll hear like, "Oh, I have no money," and my response to that is, "Okay, let's find out a way so that you can make more money." But people don't want to hear that because people are losers, and it's the same thing with their diet. Like, "Oh, I have all these health problems," and I say, "Okay, well, let's fix your diet so that we can alleviate or pretty much get rid of most of these health problems." I mean, if you're eating fast food and processed food and junk food, that's probably one of the biggest issues that you have. But in my experience, when I talk about that, people just look at me like I'm retarded and don't want to hear it. So, yeah, so I think most people are lazy because here's the thing. If you have the opportunity to get yourself out of a bad situation, do everything you can to take it. You know what I'm saying? Do everything you can to get out of that situation. So most people don't do that. Next question: What about your parents, and are they hardworking? Sure, they're very hardworking, but just because you're a hard worker doesn't mean you'll get far in life. In fact, it's actually the opposite. Like, the harder you work, the lower your salary is in general. So I remember when I was working fast food, and that was the hardest shit in my life, and so was retail. Like that shit was like the hardest shit I ever did, because it's just a lot of stress, no real direction. The pay is low. They expect you to break your back for peanuts, and yeah. So, and my dad actually makes decent money working hard too. But so I'm not saying that's there's no exceptions to that, but in general, the harder you work, the less you get paid. And I always try to tell that to young people, but they'll study until 3 a.m. for their AP classes, and I'm telling you, no, you don't do that, because life in general, like the amount that you get paid, is how highly you think of yourself. In fact, that actually matters more than your skill. Ideally, you want both, but the way that you present yourself is much more important than any sort of skill that you have. And it's, I'm trying to think. There was an analogy that I had for this. So in business, for example, if you ask the general person, like the average person, like what's more important, like the advertising, the marketing of a product, or the quality of the product itself, I'm not sure. I haven't had this to many people, but I know for myself that if you talked to me like 5-10 years ago, I would have told them, oh yeah, the quality of the product is more important than the advertising or the marketing of the product. Like, isn't that why people pay money for products? And it turns out that's not really true. I mean, think about McDonald's. McDonald's sells very poor quality products, but they're always engaged in marketing and advertising. So it's kind of like that. Like, ideally, you want both. You want good marketing and good quality of products. But if you're going to tell me which one is more important to succeed in business, I will tell you marketing is way more important than the actual quality of the product. And it's the same thing with, let's say, how much money you make. Your title and hierarchy and status and how you think of yourself is way more important to the amount of money you make than your actual skills. But ideally, you want both. Right? So that's pretty much the answer to the last question, which is, what about your parents? Are they hardworking? Yes, they're hardworking. But just because you're a hard worker doesn't mean society will reward you for that. And in fact, you could actually read about this. That's the whole premise of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Where poor dad's hardworking, but then in the end he's broke. Whereas rich dad is continually investing in assets that will generate him money, and that's why he can provide for himself and his family. Okay, next question by Chris Reagan. You ask, I sent another long email giving my thoughts on the world. If you want to do a video reading for that audience, I'm fine with that. If you read the essay, I ask if you give your thoughts on the paper. If you haven't read the essay, I asked to give thoughts on society in 2020. So I did read your second email. Feels very similar to, I guess, what I was thinking when I was your age. And I remember being at that age very angry. Just seeing all the dysfunction in society and nobody caring, but people getting mad at you for things that really don't matter. Like, you see like all the sick, dysfunction, people being broke, and then and no one having any interest in learning how to make money, or people being overweight, but they still want to drink the sugary drinks like soda and boba. um, you know uh, but then if you get a B in a class, that's the end of the world, and that's what's fucking wrong with people. And I remember being like very angry about that. And here's the thing, I'm not gonna give my thoughts on the essay. I still think it needs a little bit of editing. But I'm not like the best writer, but that's just my opinion. But I will read it on another video, and I'll give you my more detailed thoughts on it. So I'll just answer your question for now, about my thoughts on society in 2020. And I think we have two paths that we can take in 2020. I think, just seeing the reaction to the virus and the Corona-19 thing, or COVID-19 thing, really has shown me just how pathetic. Well, I don't know if that's the right word. I guess it is. Maybe how pathetic or weak society is, and how much of a lack of leadership there is. And I think in order for us to survive, we have to step up. And there has to be strong leaders who will take us into the next era. And I know I'm sounding like a politician here, but frankly, I don't even think the politicians themselves really matter in this context. Like, I've never lived in a society where I thought, wow, whoever the president is, it really makes a difference. I've never thought that before. And I still don't think it matters now. I think what matters is whatever we do at the local level. And what's really important is that we teach, as our tribe leaders, we teach our tribe how to survive. And that's very, very, very lacking. And look at everybody freaking out about something that doesn't really have such. It's not like Ebola where it'll just kill you off right there and has drastic effects, right? They see the news, they don't engage in any sort of critical analysis, and then they all think they're going to die. But somehow this virus will only kill you if you're engaged in opening up your business, going to the beach. But for some reason, if you go to a protest about racial oppression, it's not really going to affect. You know what I mean? Like, there's no real critical thinking involved. And I think in order for us to survive in the next era, there has to be strong leaders. And if there are none, we have to step up and become those strong leaders. We have to learn the skills and learn the things that nobody else wants to learn, and be a good example for others, even if nobody wants to learn it from us, right? Because most people are headed in a path of disaster. I know a person whose small business was, she had a successful restaurant, like a tea shop, and it's going to close down this month because of the lockdowns, right? So it's not financially sustainable anymore. And I think when we have dumb leaders who don't think about the consequences of their actions, and not only that, they have to learn how to say no to the mob mentality and do what's best, that's how society will survive. But because we had a lot of leaders, especially in states like New York and California, who just want to give in to the mob mentality and, not do what's right, that's why places like California and New York are crumbling. That's why people, in Los Angeles and Orange County, starting from a few years ago, people in Southern California, there were more people leaving Southern California than coming into it. And the only people who really come into Southern California were dumb 18-year-olds influenced by the media, thinking that somehow going to college there is better than just staying at home and the comfort of your own home and going to a local community college, which is just as good. But yeah, so I'll go into more detail about what you wrote, but I think in order for society to survive, we need to step up our leadership game. And so if in your area you don't see other people who would be a good example for you. You have to be the good example. You have to be the guy who starts eating healthy when everyone else is eating junk food. You have to be the guy who's learned how to make millions of dollars when everyone else is broke because they just spend their paycheck on a $50,000 pickup truck because they have no impulse control. Stuff like that. You have to be a leader. And that's the same for me. I don't consider myself a leader, but at the same time, I'm learning little by little. You know, I'm learning how to give direction. I'm learning to be a good example for others. And I think that's what we need in order to survive in 2020. And look, I'll make a new video about the essay that you wrote, right? And then give you my thoughts from there. But I feel like when you write that to me, you're kind of preaching to the choir, because I've been I've been saying that for like 10 plus years. But I think it's good that you repeat to me what I've told you, and you have your own thoughts, because obviously, you see the dysfunction in your own little localized area, and you want to reach out to me to see, this is what I see, this is how I feel, which is awesome. Okay, next video. I'm sorry, next video. Next comment by David Alvarez. David writes, have you ever read any of the writings of the Stoic philosophers such as Epictetus, Seneca, or Marcus Aurelius? I find them often both perceptive and practical, as well as very readable. No, I don't think I ever have, and I don't know if they're Greek or Roman philosophers. They sound like they're one of the two. And frankly, I'm sure there's so much information and good writings out there, but I've never read them. Mostly because I've had a real aversion to reading in my early years, and every time we study something in class, my mind would tune out just because I was just really bored. Like, my mind would tune out from like when we read Shakespeare and stuff, and I don't remember any of the stories that we read. Frankly, I don't remember anything I learned in high school other than the stuff that I went hardcore studying on my own. But if you could just point out some things that you think are insightful, that would be great. Like the writings that I've read that I think are insightful to me were probably philosophers from like the 1980s, if we're going to kind of go on an intellectual route. Like, if we're going to go from a more comedic route, I think Adam Carolla is a great philosopher, even though I don't necessarily agree with everything that he says. But I remember that I related to him a lot, listening to him as like a 12, 13-year-old to Adam Carolla, and he made me laugh a lot when I was young. But I think he had a lot of insightful points. But if we're going to go the intellectual, I think Milton Friedman, Thomas Sowell, out of the politicians, I think Ron Paul, he knows what he's talking about. That doesn't mean I necessarily agree with everything they said, but I feel like they have a better grasp of society than your normal average person who just watches the media and says, that's the truth. Or they went to college and whatever the college says is, that's the truth, right? And so, so I can't say that I have ever read that, but I think we all have our own biases and things, especially when we're young, things that we're attracted to that reflect our life experience. I also think that, there's other philosophies that I really am attracted to that you wouldn't necessarily call philosophy, like books about food. I think I was really attracted for a certain period of time learning about nutrition and food, just because I didn't have that knowledge, and I felt like it would benefit me so much. That I think is a modern issue that they didn't have back then. I think back then, this issue with food is that you just had a lack of it. But I think if you had it, you didn't have to wonder if it was poisoned, if it was sprayed. Was it fed grass or was it fed corn? None of those issues, because we with every step of technological improvements, we created a new problem and decide that for every new problem we create, we put a Band-Aid over it. Kind of like a leaking pipes. Instead of actually like fixing the plumbing, we're just going to put a Band-Aid over the leak. And I think, and I know this is kind of a tangent to your question, but I think if you want to learn more about food, about our food system, I think that the documentary Food Incorporated is really great. But going back to your question, no, I haven't read any of that, because I just have, for whatever reason, I was just more attracted to the writings of the philosophers of the 1980s and Adam Carolla and maybe other people that I can't really think of at the top of my head. All right, so this is the Ha Man here. If you have any thoughts, comments, leave them below, and I'll see you guys on the next video.